Welcome to Focus on Albany. My guest today is Howie Hawkins, who is running for governor of the state of New York on the Green Party line. So, Howie, how's it going?
Well, it's petitioning now. We need
Okay.
45,000 signatures in 42 days, which is probably the hardest petition to get on the ballot we know of in the world. I mean,
In the world.
yeah, it's the hardest in the United States now. There's some
Wow.
states that have more signatures, but they have months to get them, 6 months, a year. Here we have 42 days. And then the closest petition we can find is in Putin's Russia. So if you want to run for the top position that's elected in an oblast, which is like their states, it's 15,000 signatures in 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
It's close to the old standard here of 15,000 signatures in 42 days. So we've been shopping a bill around to return to the old standard in New York, to have more reasonable ballot access. And I tell the legislators, we just want to get back to the Putin standard in New York. And they laugh and they say, you're right. But the Democrats say, well, we don't want to cross the governor in an election year. So maybe next year. So that's where
So,
we're at. So we're going to have to do this very difficult petition just to get on the ballot.
so it was Andrew Cuomo put this in place, not Kathy Hochul, right?
Yes, in April 2020, attached to the state budget package, he changed the law. So it triples the number of signatures you need to get back on the ballot. It more than triples the number of votes you need. The standard now, the old standard was 50,000 votes. Now it's 130,000 votes or 2%, whichever is greater. In 2020, when all the parties that didn't cross endorse a major party presidential candidate lost their ballot status in New York, the number of votes you needed was 173,000, which is well over triple the number of votes we needed in before 50,000. We estimate that we'll need at least 150,000 in the gubernatorial race. The turnout will probably be a little bit lower than the presidential race. So triple the signatures, triple the votes, increased by 5 times the number of signatures we have to get in half the congressional districts, from 100 to 500, the distribution requirement. It doubled the frequency we have to meet the standard from every 4 years for governor
Mm-hmm.
to every 2 years for governor, president, governor, and so forth.
Right.
So, it's designed to knock parties like the Green Party just out of the elections. So that's a top issue for us. You
So,
want an
but
inclusive democracy, not the exclusionary system we have now, particularly when the country's in a democracy crisis.
mm-hmm.
The Republicans are suppressing the vote and setting it up so they can count the vote and steal elections in many states. And the Democrats' response has been at the federal level, where they could preempt those measures at the state level by Republicans with federal voting rights and election protection legislation, but they won't lift the filibuster to do it. So the Democrats are feckless in the face of this challenge from the Republicans to democracy, and then they turn around in states like New York and make it harder for their competition to the left, the Green Party, to even get on the ballot. So we have a real democracy crisis, and it's a bipartisan problem.
So what about the press? Has the press contacted you at all, or are they non-committal in what you're trying to do?
We had a news conference, and to announce our campaign, we had 9 news organizations on the call. It was a Zoom conference,
Hmm.
so that's pretty good. They're covering the fact that we announced that we're running. I think probably they're going to wait to see if we do get on the ballot, and then maybe give us more coverage. But we'll have to see.
So, Kathy Hochul seems like she's the front runner for the Democratic primary. What's your view of the Democratic candidates who are running for governor this year? There's Hochul, there's Swazi, and then there's Jimani Williams.
Well, she's a corporate centrist, pretty much typical, center right Democrat, in the mold of Andrew Cuomo, who appointed her lieutenant governor. She's being funded by the same big money interests on Wall Street and real estate business and so forth. Swazi's running to her right, is an even more conservative Democrat,
Mhm.
and Jimani Williams running to her left, promoting some of the progressive policies. Um, but the Democratic primary history is that the progressive candidate gets about a third of the vote, and the corporate candidate gets 2/3. So it's 2-to-1 margin. That was true for Zephyr Teachout. That was true for Cynthia Nixon. Um, I have no reason to believe it'll be different for Jimani Williams, but we'll see.
And Jimani Williams is not as funded as Tom Swazi, right?
I haven't looked at their funding, but I would guess that's the case, given who the base for Jimani is and who the base for Swazi is.
Mm-hmm. And on the Republican line, we have Zeldin, right? There's
Hmm.
Giuliani, and there's another candidate, right?
Yeah, Rob Masserino.
Yes, yes. So assess the Republican run for governor.
Well, they have about excuse me, they have about as much chance of winning as I do. It's a state has a 2-to-1 Democratic enrollment. So one message I would give to the media is cover us like you cover the Republicans, because it's not just the end result that counts, it's the debate in the whole campaign process that shapes, the policy debate and what the next elected officials in the legislature and the governorship will do. So the Republicans are running to the far right. They all are Trump loving extremists, in my opinion. They have bought into the big lie that Trump actually won the 2020 election. And, that's basically their whole campaign plan. They're Trumpy Republicans.
So the um, Zeldin is a supporter of Trump. And in New York State, I don't think that's going to do him much good. Why do you think the Republicans wanted to nominate a pro-Trump candidate?
Because that's what their base wants. You know, Trump is not popular with most New Yorkers, but he's popular with Republican New Yorkers.
Wow. So, I um offhand I don't remember his name. The congressman from the western part of the state, um, who's not going to be a congressperson anymore. Um, he would have been great because he spoke out about the student loan debt crisis. Do you think that's going to be a big issue? And if so, why did the Republicans not pick somebody who espoused the issue of helping people with student loans?
Because the Republicans don't care about student loan debt. They're not going to make it an issue. It's not an issue so much in the state because most of those loans are with the federal government, which can cancel those loans, write off those loans and absorb, the costs, because most of them are guaranteed or through the federal government. So um, what we want to talk about is making it easier for students to go to public colleges and universities and trade schools by making them tuition free, which has been a longstanding proposal of the Green Party. And when we got 5% in 2014 and Cuomo had to compete for our votes instead of taking the progressive side for granted, he did make a gesture with the Excelsior scholarships, but it really wasn't tuition-free public college. It was another scholarship on top of everything else. And only 2 or 3% of SUNY and CUNY students have been able to take advantage of that scholarship. So, tuition-free public college is still something we need to do in New York. That's
Uh,
part of our platform.
when I asked this question, his name escaped me, but it's um, John Katko.
Oh, yeah, he's Central New York. He's based here in Syracuse.
Oh, okay.
He
Okay.
was he was making statements about canceling student debt.
Oh, yeah, he's been talking about student debt for quite a few years now.
Hmm.
Yep.
Well, I haven't noticed that, basically reading the papers, at least here in Syracuse. That's
Uh-huh.
interesting.
So, it seems as though Kathy Hochul has a few skeletons in her closet that has not materialized yet, but is on the verge of materializing with the whole sports complex in Buffalo. What do you think about that?
Well, we don't need a second Buffalo Billion boondoggle. The owner of the Buffalo Bills, Pagula, has $6 billion to his name, and the stadium's going to cost $1.5 billion. He can use the money he's got as collateral to borrow, and if it is going to increase revenues for the Bills, then he can pay off that loan with those increased revenues. There's no reason for the state to subsidize a billionaire. And if the state does want to get a piece of the action there with the Buffalo Bills, it should offer what money it does offer in exchange for an equity position in the Buffalo Bills. In other words, public ownership. And that would effectively anchor the Bills to Buffalo more than building a new stadium. It would be like the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is a small city of a little over 50,000, and they have an NFL franchise because the community owns the Green Bay Packers. You
Hmm.
cannot vote your stock in the Green Bay Packers unless you're a resident of Green Bay. So, community ownership would be a way of anchoring the Bills to Buffalo. But that was not on the table. This is just a giveaway. And yeah, that's Hochul pandering to the rich folks in Buffalo, where she's from. So even if it's not illegal, it's immoral. It's wrong.
And her husband is tied up in that whole situation, right?
Uh, I don't know. Is he part of the Buffalo Billion deal? I was not aware of that. I know he's a businessman. I haven't really paid attention to that. I know his name comes up sometimes in these
Okay.
discussions, but
Okay.
my focus right now is getting 45,000 signatures in 42
Right.
days. It's just that's all. It's 100% of my free time is devoted to that.
So, speaking of that, you're gonna need a cushion. How many, uh, technically are you shooting for? I mean, 45 might be, get you disqualified pretty quickly if they challenge your vote, your signatures. What do
Yeah,
you,
we want a cushion of tens of thousands. When the standard was 15,000 signatures, we turned in close to 30,000.
uh-huh.
Uh, this was back before we had secured a ballot line in 2010. So, we are capable of getting 45,000, I believe. How much of a cushion we can get remains to be seen, but we're going for the biggest cushion we can get.
Oh boy, that's tough. And you have a lot of people statewide getting signatures for you?
Yeah, Green Party members are out getting signatures, and we've hired a few people to, work at it as a job. We're paying
Mhm.
$20 an hour, which is what we believe the new minimum wage should become scaled up to that over the next few years. So we're doing the best we can.
So tell us your thoughts about Kathy Hochul's choice of Brian Benjamin.
Well, she should have vetted him better. He had a history there in Harlem working with the real estate industry, which is notoriously uh, cutting corners and trying to influence elections. I mean, think of Donald Trump, but Jared Kushner is another one. The Ratners. I mean, real estate plays a big role in electoral politics, and turns out these donations were illegal, and so they caught Brian Benjamin and his donor, who was a business partner. Hochul should have known that, and I think she picked him because he's African American. She wanted to appeal to that base, and he's part of the corporate center of the Democratic Party, so he fit in politically.
So what do you think? Do you think that if Hochul had picked Jimani Williams, that would have been a better choice?
Yeah, but she never would have. He
Okay.
stands for things she doesn't. So
Okay.
she is not a progressive. Jimani's a liberal. He's a progressive. So, that she never would have done that. That's just a hypothetical that would never happen.
But don't you think the bottom line with a politician like that is electability? Even though they might not agree on stuff, a ticket like that would have drawn the two sides of the Democratic Party to vote.
Yeah, but her base is really the big money. And the big money would not be happy with Jimani Williams. So she wouldn't be able to raise the big money to run her campaign. That's why it was never on the table. It's not about a broad appeal based on policy. It's about, reassuring the big money that might fund your campaign that you're going to look out for their interests. So that's why Jimani Williams was never in the cards for Kathy Hochul.
Wow. Um, so, what are the main issues that you're going to bring up in this campaign season?
Well, we're running on the theme of inclusive democracy, which includes fair ballot access, reasonable ballot access, of course, but also replacing our single member district winner take all system, which excludes political minorities, which is not just the Green Party, it's the members of a major party that are the minority in their particular legislative district. Most of our legislative districts, because of gerrymandering, are one party districts. They're not competitive elections. Everybody knows who's going to win. A lot of people say, why bother voting? I can't change who's going to represent us. That's what happens when you have single member district winner take all elections. So we want, for statewide offices, which are single member seats, ranked choice voting. And then for the state legislature, we want proportional representation through ranked choice voting in multi-member districts. And that's how you get proportional representation of all the political viewpoints in the state legislature. And by the way, if you went to that kind of proportional representation system, it would completely end gerrymandering. There's no way you can do partisan gerrymandering of multi-member districts that elect people by proportional representation. So we would, solve that problem too. So inclusive democracy. And the other big theme is an eco-socialist Green New Deal. Now, my running mate, Gloria Matera, for lieutenant governor, and I ran on the Green New Deal in 2010. We were the first US candidates to campaign for a Green New Deal, which means a rapid transition to 100% clean energy and zero greenhouse gas emissions. We want to do it in a decade. We know it's technically possible. The question is, do we have the political will to make it happen? And we say eco-socialist because a lot of this has got to be done through the public sector. I mean, what we're getting from the Democrats who have adopted the slogan and diluted the content is that we're going to give loan guarantees and subsidies and tax breaks to corporations to incentivize them to do clean energy and basically clean energy. They're not even dealing with the manufacturing sector, somewhat with the transportation sector. But the problem is you're giving these incentives to scores of corporations that make their own business decisions, and they don't fit together as a coordinated plan to make this rapid transition. We make the analogy to World War II when the federal government took over a quarter of the manufacturing capacity of the country in order to turn industry on a dime into what FDR called the arsenal of democracy, to arm the Allies to defeat the fascist powers. And we need to do nothing less through the public sector to defeat climate change. So that's one part of the Green New Deal. The other is an economic bill of rights to end poverty and economic insecurity. And, top of the list there is the New York Health Act that would provide publicly funded health insurance for every resident of New York, and also a guaranteed income above poverty built into the tax structure. So if your income is below the poverty line, the state would send you money each month to bring you above the poverty line. And that is a policy that Martin Luther King Jr. was advocating at the end of his life. He said, the best way to end poverty is a direct approach. Give people that don't have enough money the money they need so they can, live a life above poverty.
From your perspective, what issues will the Democrats be running on?
They're going to run on the crime issue, and the Republicans are definitely going to push that. and they're going to, if it's Hochul, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be, she's going to argue she's, tough on crime, more police. Um, she modified the bail laws. Uh, and, our position is more police are not going to reduce crime. You want enough police to investigate crimes and catch the people that did them, but police on the street don't stop crime. We just had a murder here in Syracuse. The police were 20, 30 feet away, and the shooter pulled out his gun and killed one person and wounded
Wow.
another. So what does reduce crime is reducing poverty, so that a lot of the frustrations of being poor and the shootings we particularly get from the youth and the property crime is not necessary, because people have better options. With the guaranteed income, they're at least able to maintain a home and food and so forth. But also, our Green New Deal is a big job creator. And so, if people have a good job option, crime is not a good way to try to make a living when you got better options. So that's how we reduce crime. And, just enough police to do the investigations and, because, sometimes it's hard to figure out who did a crime. And so you want, police who are good at investigations. But, and also, this is another thing we want to do, is have the police more oriented toward de-escalating situations rather than coming in, as tough guys, and they handle people that maybe are having a mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Or also they're, petty crimes that the police spend a lot of time, like, arresting a homeless person for vagrancy when society should be finding that person a home.
Mm-hmm.
Or, arresting people for possession of drugs when what they need is drug treatment and something to help them with their addiction. And, and then of course there are the traffic stops. I mean, there's a lot of, very petty, even non-criminal behavior the police are intervening in. 99% of what they do is not stopping violent crime or big property crime.
So what do you think the Republicans will be running on?
Tough on crime. And I think that's all I've been hearing from them. That's their main issue.
What about economic development?
Well, both parties will give away money to corporate interests. The Buffalo Billion's an example of that.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard, maybe they are Republicans, I'm sorry about that. I haven't heard Republicans in the Buffalo area complaining about that, because it's kind of local boosterism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the Republicans are going to run against crime, and, that they're with Trump in terms of the national political picture. They think
Mm-hmm.
Trump is a way to get votes. Certainly in their primary, that's, who they're going to be appealing to.
Mm-hmm.
When they transition to the general election, they're going to say Hochul's soft on crime. She's going to say, no, I'm not. I think the crime issue is going to be the top issue the two major parties talk about.
Really? And, I think the economic situation in New York, as well as other parts of the country, promotes crime, right?
I'm sorry, I was
That's
deleting
okay. That's okay.
that message.
The economic situation in in New York State, as well as nationwide, unemployment. I don't think that the economy has fully come back from COVID, right?
Yeah, COVID, the Great Recession in 2008, the deindustrialization of upstate New York. We have a huge poverty problem, particularly in upstate. My city of Syracuse is among the cities with over 100,000 people in the nation, number one in child poverty, number one in family poverty. Rochester's number two in child poverty and number three in family poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo's number six in both child poverty and family poverty. And that's indicative of every, the smaller cities across upstate and the rural areas. So, we need a program to develop the economy, and we also need social supports like universal public health care in the New York Health Act, the guaranteed minimum income, but we would have the state assist people in starting worker co-ops, in where there are business opportunities, provide financing and technical assistance. And with the Green New Deal, we would target manufacturing of components, solar, wind, heat pumps, those kinds of things, to upstate cities so we can provide good manufacturing jobs, and also assist in providing community-owned food processing facilities so the farmers have a place to sell their products that are converted into food or other products made with agricultural inputs, fibers and so forth. So we need a targeted development upstate that is not just tax breaks, loan guarantees, and subsidies to private businesses. That corporate welfare approach, that trickle down approach, where you give money to the people that's already rich and have a lot of property, and it's supposed to trickle down to benefit the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
New York's been doing that since the 70s. And in upstate, we've been declining since the 1970s. So we need a new bottom up approach that directly employs people and sets up public enterprises that directly employ people so we can, guarantee that people benefit from this public investment.
So, in the final moments, give your contact information and how could they become part of your campaign?
Well, they should go to our website, which is www.hawkinsmatera. And Hawkins is spelled Hawkins. Matera is Mattera. So .org. And on there, you can find the petitions, you can find our policy platform, you can find biographical information about us as the candidates, and you can sign up to volunteer. And so everything you need is at that website. That's hawkinsmatera.org. Hawkins Matera is one word.
So, if somebody wants to carry a petition for you, they don't necessarily have to be a registered Green, right?
Right. They can be, it's an independent nominating petition, which means anybody in any party or no party can carry those petitions, witness signatures. The only restriction is if they signed a petition or witnessed a petition for another gubernatorial candidate, which would have been the Democratic and Republican candidates who filed primary petitions.
Mm-hmm.
They needed 15,000 signatures, 1/3 of what we need. So if they signed or witnessed for Tom Suozzi or Jimani Williams or Rob Astorino or Andrew Giuliani,
Mm-hmm.
they're not eligible to carry or sign our petition. But
Okay.
that leaves almost all New Yorkers eligible. So the
Okay.
petition is on our website. They can download it. There's instructions there on how to do the petitioning. And there's a way to contact us if they have any questions. So that's what we need, until May 31st. We need people out there getting signatures so the Green Party ticket can be on the ballot.
Thank you, Howie. Our time is up, and I'm sure that we will be talking again. So you've been listening to Focus on Albany. I'm Cynthia Pooler. I'm talking to Howie Hawkins, who's the Green Party candidate for governor. And if you like this show, subscribe to my YouTube page. Thanks, Howie. I'm sure we'll talk again. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Have a great day.
All right.